So today I wanted to talk about Nostalrius and its impending closure, which I believe happens today, actually. Today should be the last day that the server's up, if it's even up anymore, I'm not even sure. But I wanted to chat about it, not necessarily why it's closing, but what we can learn from Nostalrius as a thing, as an entity in the internet, in the universe. I hope you don't mind the B-roll footage in the background, by the way. I'm just going to use some assorted footage from games that I'm playing right now because I don't have any Warcraft-specific stuff, and looping the trailer for like 6 or 7 minutes is not going to work. So if you haven't heard by now, Nostalrius, I'm just going to call it Nost, is a vanilla Warcraft-inspired private server for World of Warcraft, and it has effectively been shuttered. That experiment is over, and sadly, a community has been lost to it. It's unfortunate that it happened. This wasn't really like a possibility, though. This was more of an inevitability. Like, under US copyright law, you can't let something like this go at the size it was. Eventually, somebody's going to get the ability to challenge your copyright, and then you have the potential to lose it. As far as I understand, I am not a copyright lawyer, nor am I even in the US, but this is my understanding of copyright law. But I don't really want to talk about the actual shutdown. I mean, it's a pretty common knowledge at this point. There's about 1 billion places talking about it, and it's not a terribly interesting story when lawyers send official-sounding letters to server hosts. Instead, I want to discuss kind of an interesting precedent that Nost set. Because not only was the server a huge community, but it's one with a very specific core mission and vision. It was to resurrect World of Warcraft as it was a decade before the current date. A pretty clear reaction to what modern Warcraft has kind of become. Basically, it was a paradise for jaded hardcores like myself. One of my biggest regrets was that I never actually wound up playing on the server personally. I had this whole plan for a series that I was going to do about vanilla leveling and vanilla WoW, that I was planning to do sometime in the summer before this came up, but I guess the jerkbag lawyers had to ruin my fun. Nost wasn't just like a free server equivalent to a World of Warcraft Renaissance fair. It was a reaction to a modern change to World of Warcraft. It was a place that sought to recreate the past because it was dissatisfied with the present. Or at least, that's the impression I got from a good chunk of its player base. Hell, even the name, Nostalrius. Nostalgia. It's like, yeah. The thing is, this server was, by many measures, ridiculously successful. It brought in around 15,000 concurrent players at peak, 6,000 regularly, with nearly 1 million accounts. For a private server, that's pretty much unheard of. And granted, some of these were people who were like all about playing World of Warcraft for free, but many others were people who wanted to recapture the old world. So there's some questions that come from this, such as, what kind of message does this send to Blizzard? For years, people have been asking for legacy servers similar to what Nost offered, pointing out the ease of implementation and the appeal to former World of Warcraft players, and Blizzard has always rebutted with, there just isn't enough actual interest in a legacy server. I would like to make the argument that a legacy server based on the principles set out by Nost, a server which basically mimics Warcraft's original launch cycles and release dates, effectively 10 years in the future, is actually probably not a bad idea and something that Blizzard could conceivably do, and might be worthwhile for them to do. And I'd like to lay this out in 3 points. But I think Nost's first message is pretty loud and clear, because 15,000 concurrent players is a lot of people. If you manage to capture, say, half that number, that is like a high-pop server, according to some estimates. Not to mention the number of people grossly opposed to private servers and piracy who still love the idea of a vanilla server would also be attracted to this kind of thing. And we also have the ridiculous amount of other private servers that try to emulate vanilla Warcraft out there, the small guys with maybe a couple hundred people on them. There are a lot of these, and a lot of people interested in this. Remember, that 15,000 number is concurrent players, not accounts. If we're talking accounts, we're closer to 1 million. I don't have access to Blizzard's marketing and information on demographics data, but I do have access to the numbers brought forth by groups like Nostal. And they paint a pretty interesting picture. One you could draw a pretty easy argument from that this could capture a fairly substantial player base. That's my first argument. There's a lot of people who want this, a lot more than I think you realize. Secondly, we're in the days of vastly declining subscriber numbers, and in those times, everybody starts to count a lot more. 7,500 people, or that 50% capture rate I mentioned in my last point, which may or may not be realistic, I'm not 100% sure, could account for over $1 million a year in new revenue that you otherwise don't have. I highly doubt that the costs could be any higher than that to run, considering that 2 administrators and 4 developers, supported by a small team of volunteer GMs, did it essentially out of pocket with community donations for nearly a year, and they were hobbyists with no access to Blizzard's resources. All I'm saying is, it could very potentially be worth it, as my second point. Finally, how will it be delivered? Arrange it on a content system similar to what Nost originally planned to do, with rolling content patches, which were basically just the content patches you released 10 years ago, including expansions, which is kind of how they were planning to do it. This might take some adaptation of netcode to work with Blizzard's new systems, but I remind you that 6 hobbyists basically managed to pull this off for over a year until a cease and desist letter hit them. I have a feeling that for over $1 million a year in new revenue, potentially more if we could assume this could draw a lot more people back to the game, you could find a way to make it work. So, we can argue that it probably isn't that difficult to implement it, especially with Blizzard's resources. So based on the proof that I have available to me, those are my 3 arguments. First of all, there is clearly an audience for this. Even if it's only 15,000, 20,000 people, there is certainly an audience for this, at least 1 server's worth. Secondly, that audience is a pretty solid potential for profit and new money coming into the company that you otherwise don't have. And thirdly, it doesn't seem like it would be that difficult to implement, being that 6 people did it on a hobbyist machine outside of Blizzard. So what kind of message does Nost send to Blizzard? It's a pretty clear message, in my opinion. This is a message that shouts, no, we're not some minority. We're a population of a small MMORPG. Almost 2 of your servers and $1 million in potential revenue. We are not an insignificant group, and all we want is something hobbyists have been accomplishing for years. We want to enjoy World of Warcraft again, as we did many years ago. And I think in these modern days, where private vanilla WoW servers are growing by leaps and bounds, and modern servers are collapsing, the message that Nost sent is loud and clear. Hey there, and thank you very much for checking out this little video in which I talk about the Nost situation, what's happening with that, and what I think it means to Blizzard is kind of a big deal. By the way, if you really didn't like how I didn't use Warcraft-related B-roll in this one, let me know in the comments, and I won't do it anymore. I don't have any Warcraft footage, and I don't have an active Warcraft subscription, so yeah. But thank you very much again for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please do like and subscribe. And if you've been wondering about those weird sponsorships at the end of some of my videos, it actually has stuff to do with my Patreon page. You should check it out if you want, of course. But thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this. You all have a great one.